you going. It gets you moving.
Hey! Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Game Diaries. I'm Miss Harvey.
And I'm Michele Morrow. How are you, Steph? How was your week?
I'm great. Very stressed with life, as usual.
Didn't you launch a clothing brand?
Yeah, I might have launched a clothing brand a couple hours ago.
Just a few hours ago. Just a few short hours ago. It's kind of a big deal. It looks really good. The video looks great.
Thanks. I'm wearing, for those who are watching on YouTube, I'm wearing one of the pieces from LFA, which is the new clothing brand. I'm excited. And that's why today, Michele, I'm treating myself on the show. I'm opening this little bottle of wine, but I don't drink. Michele, I don't drink anymore. So this is a 0 alcohol bottle of wine, and I wanted to show you. No alcohol.
Wow.
I've been sober since January 8th. Actually, I was with Danny, our producer, the day I stopped drinking. So
was there anything in particular that made you stop, or did you drink very much?
I think that I didn't know how to say to stop. So I'm not like someone that drinks. So let's go deep into this, Michele. I think there's different kind of alcoholism. I think mine was for me alcoholism for sure. Nobody would have told me that it was because I didn't seem like an alcoholic. But for me, what it is that I can't stop after I get the first drink. Yeah. Then I'm party girl all night long until I pass out, right? So yeah, it was on January 7th. I was in New York by myself for Madison Square Garden. I went to see a New York Rangers game, came back to the hotel, and I stopped at the bar by myself, and I started having fun with the people at the bar of the hotel, and I went to bed at like 4 a.m. and I missed my flight to go back home. And usually it doesn't matter, but this time it was because we were going to a cabin with all of the friends, and I got there like super late, and it was a mess. Somebody had to like drive me there after. So the whole thing was like, I don't want to be in that station ever again.
Yeah.
So
it's hard because it's like you start realizing how much control you've lost in the situation.
I lost complete control. And you know, it really happened, but when it happened, I did not like it. And I forgot everything that happened the night before. I don't remember anything. So the story I told you is all I remember. That's it.
Wow. Well, good for you for making that decision. That's a hard decision to make. It's like, you know, and it's not easy to always follow through with. Like I have a lot of friends who are alcoholics, and you know, it's really hard. It can be a real struggle. So good for you for doing it.
This is the second time in my life I completely stopped drinking. The first time it was 2 years, and we're going close to a year, and I'm super happy to be launching Elevate with you. So we launched it today.
Some non-alcoholic bubbly here, but I don't have it. I have water. So we'll just pretend.
Enough. It's good enough. You're going to see, so again, for those watching with the video, you're going to see my teeth still become tinted from the wine, just like as if it was real wine. And to be quite frank, Michele, it gives me the same feeling. Like you pop that bottle, you drink it, you're feeling great. Like everything is kind of the same. So.
Just without all of the negative side effects.
Exactly. Yeah. Tomorrow morning, I'll feel great.
I'm so happy for you. I love the design on that shirt, too. I'm going to have to get one. I love the, is it like a crushed velvet? What is that?
Yeah, it's like, it's super shiny. It's super, like for you in LA, you're going to love to wear it in the summer.
Oh, yeah?
Like, it's definitely a summer hoodie. It goes through a little bit like the wind, so you feel like it's breathing.
Oh, nice.
So I like it. It was supposed to be a summer collection, and it took way too long, and I decided to just ship it anyway. So here we are. Thank you.
So it's just called Elevate?
Elevate for elevate in French means elevate. And because it's spelled ER at the end, I didn't want people to pronounce it like Oliver, like Oliver, because I don't find that cute
Oh.
at all. So I was like, how could we make sure that people pronounce it elevate the right way? And I was like,
right.
oh my God, Miss Harvey. So
yeah.
it's the last end of my name with elevate. So
That's really cute. I love it.
me too. I was like, when we figured it
Exciting.
out, I was like, this is it finally. And it took me, Michelle, to create my clothing line. It took me years to find the name. I'm telling you.
Really? Was that the hardest
Years.
part?
That was the hardest part.
Yeah.
I've been talking about this for years. I just couldn't find the right fit, and here we are.
What set it off and you were like, this is it. This is the name.
I'm working with a company called Represent, and they were brainstorming names for me because they really wanted this to happen, and they decided that with everything that represents me, it should be elevate, like elever, like the French version. And I'm like, nah, like
I don't like the way
for
it
many
sounds.
reasons.
Yeah.
Also, it's not Googleable. It's like, ugh. And then it clicked me one morning. I woke up and I'm like, what if I use their idea with Miss Harvey? So here we are.
It's really cool. Yeah. I love it.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I heard something happen with you too today. Another crazy day for both of us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. There was, last night, my husband and I went to our backyard and we're just hanging out, like having a nice backyard night. And we look up and there's a giant string of Christmas lights that is like draped over like the highest point of our telephone wires or like the power wires to the house. And there's no way anyone could have thrown it up there. We only have one neighbor. And even then they're like further off on the hill. There's no way this could have happened. So we had to call like the emergency like Department of Water and Power to have them come out here and like hike up this crazy steep hill to try to like pull down this string of lights. And what they think happened was it must have been like in a tree somewhere. And then the bird flew out and like got it stuck and then dropped it like over our house. It just happened to be like he may have flown through the lines and it just got it was like a super long, I don't know, like 100 feet copper
laughing.
wire.
I can only imagine the bird flying and people looking at the bird like, the bird has a Christmas tree light following. Like that's all I can see. Like this really,
like whenever
this
I
really
like
low
our security
quality movie.
Yeah.
Where there's a bird that's like you see this really bad CGI of
just this little like, yeah. And people are like, what is that bird trying to say? What does it want? It's like a sign. It's 2020.
And
What's
then
happening?
Exactly. And then it drops into the house of the protagonist. And then the movie starts like that, you know?
Yeah. It's like, it was probably, we have these big crows that hang out. Yeah.
That's
We
all
have
I
these
can think of.
huge crows that hang out in our yard. Like they like, they're friends, they're friendly crows, and they hang out up there. And I'm wondering, like, I mean, it would have to be a big bird to have grabbed this. I tried to look on all of our security footage, like all day, being like, I need to see how this happened. Like, I need to know.
Can you see it on the camera when it's
like
there?
It cuts it out like right before. So I was waiting to see, like, maybe I'll see it fly into the screen. Like, I spent way too much time doing this, by the way.
Oh my God. When I have a house, I'm definitely buying security cameras. I think that's so cool.
They get so exciting to watch.
We're suspecting our neighbor across us to have like a security camera on his balcony, but we're not sure. But it's like looking at us. Like it's straight up looking at. So right now when I'm sitting here, my window is right in front of me and his camera is looking at me. That's what we're thinking. Because we can't figure out what
maybe he's doing a stream of your streaming.
That's so
yeah. He's just like his own like
we're
real life
right
Twitch
now,
streamer.
But what if
there's an alternate universe where this is happening?
That he's actually happening and right now he's watching us like I got caught.
Yeah. Or he's like living for the thrill of like getting caught. Like that's what he likes. Yeah. That's not good.
That's not good. I'll keep you guys updated. Have you been gaming or watching any shows, Michelle?
Well, speaking of crows, I did actually get to the episode of Schitt's Creek where Moira pretends she pretends like she's a crow, you guys, and that voice that comes out of her, I just like took my phone up and started filming it and like texted it to like 5 friends and was like, what is happening? Her voice, she's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we watched a bunch of Schitt's Creek and the Great British Baking Show. I've been really into. Yeah, it's so calming. It's just very nice and very British, and everyone is very supportive. And like the competitors aren't like at each other's throats. They're just like really nice
is
to
that
each
a
other.
spin-off of the Canadian version?
Great British Baking Show. That's what I'm watching.
The Great Canadian Baking Show is a spin-off. It is an adaptation of the UK series. Oh, damn. All right. So interesting. Because Jason the agent keeps telling me that the Great Canadian Baking Show is amazing. So
it's so fun.
Now I'll watch the British version of it and
the British version. And it's like, it's just calming. I'm sure the Canadian version is the same way, but it's just light music and
let's just think he said smoke something before you watch that because you'll be like, hey.
No, you're just gonna want food. I'm gonna tell you, I did that, and it was all like sweets. And my husband, like, I'm not even joking. Everyone's gonna be like, "Are you kidding me?" He caramelized some pears and made whipped cream for me.
Wow, we have good men. We have a good man.
That's true.
Yep.
He's gonna cook a little bit too for Thanksgiving. Are you guys? Oh wait, you have Canadian Thanksgiving. It's different for you.
It's a
You
month
guys
ago.
already did that.
Yeah.
Did you guys cook or anything?
No, because in Quebec you don't really celebrate it. You kind of do, but not really. Like we're just happy we're off. So we honestly we forgot. I forgot. I don't have holidays first of all, and we kind of forgot. But our friends are in English Canada celebrated it. Yeah.
Well, here it's going to be crazy. California just got like a whole new lockdown order as of tonight. This is Saturday night that we're filming this. So it's going to be interesting this week with Thanksgiving. I'm very curious to see if I really hope people just stay in. Just take it as an opportunity to play video games all day. You don't have to see family and argue with them about politics. And instead you can just stay home and play some games. Have you guys been playing any games this week? Obviously, but what have you played?
Yes. So Max been playing Spider-Man, so I kind of watched him do it twice. And I think I told you, right, about the PS5. I finally finished the Astro Playroom little game that comes with the console. And I started Crash Bandicoot 2.
No way! Is
it
fun?
Yeah, because it was free on the PlayStation, and I just started playing it. I never played it. I never really played Crash Bandicoots, and it's fun. I just want to relax in the living room. It's my way of de-stressing these days. Between all the craziness, I just like 2 minutes. I play like for like 20, and I go back into a meeting. Because I realized we never. I don't know if it's like that for you, but we never stop. I never stop.
No, never.
So it's back to back to back. And if I was in an office, that wouldn't fly. Like I would stand up and like do something else sometimes. But la.
The same way.
Michelle.
Stephanie.
We never really recapped on having our first guest on the show.
That's true. We didn't. That was really special.
It was
Becky
really
is super
fun.
Cool.
It was really fun. And we have another one scheduled. So we should hopefully talk to DG Wheat.
Yes, we're waiting for him to get back on schedule, but he is going to come on. I don't know, like maybe we can figure out how to get a hold of Will Wright. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
It looks like Jane saw the podcast because Super Butter, her game, tweeted out the podcast, which was really nice.
I freaked out when you told me that, especially because the quote said like that she's my idol, like that. And I was just like, oh no, she saw that. I'm so shy now.
Yeah. It's so exciting. I love it. I was reading more about her major after you were telling me about it with performance studies. Mm-hmm. It's such a cool major. It goes beyond like it's more like research based than like acting, like actually doing something. Like it's like I kind of wish I would have known about that major when I was in college. It sounds fascinating. But yeah, she's
love research like that. I got accepted in research in video game to create like a paper and whatnot, and I decided to go work to Ubisoft instead. And sometimes I'm like, should I do it on the side? And then I'm like, I can barely sleep or go to bed or spend time with my dog. So maybe for another life.
You will. You'll come back. You're gonna do it again at some point. I know it.
Okay.
I believe it.
So let's take a quick 30 seconds break, and then let's jump back into your story, Michelle. I'm super excited.
All
yes. Right. Okay. Be right back, guys. Nervous?
A little bit. It's nerve-wracking to do this. It's like, it's exciting and I want to share and I want to like do, but then oh my God, it's so scary. But yeah, last week's episode really kind of like got me thinking about all of the kick-ass women that we have in gaming. You know, like we've covered a couple of them here on the podcast already, from like Becky to Jane. And I don't know, I just think that we are really lucky. It just made me be really grateful for how many amazing ladies like we actually have in gaming. And it's really grown to be like a much more supportive place for women than it used to be, you know, even just from like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I would say.
My God.
Don't you think?
Yes. I think that it's mind-blowing how different it is, right? We can have these discussions now and we want more. Back in the days, it was just like, we don't want to hear about you crying that there's no women in here, you know?
They just are, it's like, it was like noise and nobody wants to hear it. But now it feels like women in gaming work really hard to help other women in gaming out. Like that's what for me has been really exciting to see, because both in like my entertainment career and in my gaming career, there's historically been a scarcity of roles. So women have very few opportunities to like get jobs or be cast. And it unfortunately kind of leads to competition between women that should otherwise like be friends. I mean, it's happened to me before where like I felt like, you know, a job ended up becoming an obstacle in a friendship because so many women wanted that role. And it happens in gaming all the time and in Hollywood all the time. But I think it's gotten better. And I think a lot of it is due to just the sheer number of women that we now have in gaming. But it's also because there's a younger generation of girls that are just exceeding expectations. And honestly, like they're all such a great example of merit and for speaking up for women in general. And I'm just really impressed with like this younger generation of women. And it's a male dominated scene and we all know that, but there is more women, and the way that these women are opening it up is really inspiring to me personally. So this week I want to talk about a younger woman in gaming who's stepping into life as a public figure and a leader in the gaming space, not just for women, but with like a competitive spirit that can inspire pretty much anyone and any competitor really. I met her on one of the most important days of her life, of her career, that is. And for me, it was one of my most memorable moments in all of esports and all of gaming. I love this story. I've told it so many times. But first, I kind of want to set the stage. I'm not going to tell you yet.
Okay.
I kind of want to set the stage for what she walked into, of like what scene she's in here. So did you ever play fighting games?
Yes.
You did? Which games did you play? What were
I kind of was really into Street Fighter 4 and 5. Like I went to Evo, you know Evo, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I went to Evo 6 times.
What? I did not know this about you. I'm so excited. I love the FGC.
6 years.
Really?
Yes. My first one was in 2000, either 13 or 14, and then I went every single year since.
No way.
So
what are you playing?
Street Fighter.
So you're playing Street Fighter, and what character do you play?
So I used to play Ryu, just because he's kind of the base that I learned with, and also because I never really went any further in my progress. So I suck, but I love it so much that even when I get there, I enter the tournament. So
do you place at all?
No, I lose out. I'm 0-2 every year. But I don't practice, Michelle. I go there and I'm like, yeah, I remember last year I was able to do this combo. Okay, still works.
This is the thing about fighting games. Like, this is what I love about it. Because people who just play the games get inspired to actually compete. Like, you know, who you might not be like the number one player, but there's like, I don't know, there's a lot of open entry. There's a lot of like, there's just less barriers in the way to be able to go do that. It's so fun. Like, that's so cool. I had no idea about, like, you blow my mind. When I was growing up, you know, there was Smash on the N64.
Yeah.
But that didn't come out until I was in college. So I would see people playing in like dorm rooms and stuff. But when I was a kid, like fighting games didn't become big until like late 80s in the arcades, like 89, and then like early 90s for like Street Fighter. And it was, you know, to me, fighting games felt more like we didn't have fighting games at our house. Like, we just didn't own any of the fighting games at all, ever, on any of our consoles. It felt more like something you went to go do in public. It felt like something that, like, you went to Chuck E. Cheese and you're in an arcade and all your friends are around and there's like an impromptu tournament suddenly. And that was the feeling of Street Fighter and of fighting games in general, just like getting a crowd, kids challenging each other, and holding tournaments. So, you know, fighting games sort of like inherently bring out the competitors in us. Like, visually, it's something that we understand. It's a 1v1, hand-to-hand, close combat, punching, hitting, kicking and stuff. And it's like what we've seen on television and in movies and on the streets. And it's like, whether we like it or not, fighting is something that's just innate to us. And even if you aren't a violent person, it's just something that we've evolved from. So even if someone doesn't know how to play a fighting game at all, if they don't know the rules whatsoever, the barrier to entry is really low to watch the tournament, because you can easily identify that it's a fight. And you really only need to be aware of the health bars. So you can tell, like, this person's winning versus this person.
Yeah,
They're
for
easy
sure.
to follow, fun to watch. You know, and the audience doesn't need to know what combo you just pulled off to be entertained. They just get like a crazy badass visual, and that's all they really need. Where like in other genres, like MOBAs and even FPS, you really need to have a better understanding of the user interface that gives you like little clues of like a map or a mini map or what the objective is. Like, there's so many things that you kind of have to know. Like hero kits.
That Rocket League is also in that easy understanding. Like, my parents love Rocket League and fighting games. Just because they're like, oh, it's Rocket League, and they just sit and they watch.
Car
they
soccer.
Understand. Car soccer is simple.
I get car soccer. That's It's so true though.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's why, you know, like, you know, 2K is as well with, or, you know, EA and 2K, both of them do well with fighting games or with sports games. It's just easy to like, it's just easy to understand. So as kids, like, we didn't know what we were doing, you know, at all. But by the time that I got to college, you know, in the mid 90s, I saw competition increase because like mini tournaments were popping up in dorm rooms and people were having access to like message boards and we're starting to like understand strats from other people. And like, you would see little tournaments pop up in dorm rooms all the time, like, or at house parties and stuff. So the fighting game community, or the FGC for people out there who might not be like as aware of the term, it was really just first taking shape in the mid 90s. Like, that's when it got big. And for maybe some of you guys even less familiar, it refers, fighting game community, the FGC, all it means is a group of people who love to play fighting games. Like, that's their deal. They love it. And historically, people who identify as part of the FGC They go to local tournaments. They get to know people directly in their communities. And many of them actually try their hand at competition, like Miss Harvey did.
Yeah, especially because the online version of fighting games for so long, even now, some games, when you're thinking about there's 60 frames per second, and these pros are actually like a couple frames playing with their opponents, right? Like that. A 1 second lag is already enough to not allow you to create the combo you're supposed to. So most of the pros before COVID were looking forward to like LAN play, right? COVID is actually hurting the fighting game community probably the most than any other scene. Yeah,
that makes sense. I didn't even think about it like that, but you're completely right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that grassroots culture of it makes it really susceptible to an outside influence like that kind of shutting down the scene. Unfortunately, yeah, because like that's kind of how the fighting game community like got its identity, was by putting on like these just naturally forming tournaments all through the mid-90s. And with the success of Street Fighter 2, there weren't really like big tournaments yet. They were just like local arcades, mostly in like New York and California and Chicago. Like those were like kind of the hotbeds for it. Once like the message boards came around, there were a couple like really confident shit talkers that got on the message boards and were talking in the region of California. So it was like these Northern California players and these Southern California players, and they get connected and they just started like text trash talking each other, pre-internet about which region was best at Street Fighter 2. And this arguing between this group led to a player organized tournament called Battle of the Bays, which later became known as EVO, which you were talking about earlier. So EVO, for people who don't know, has been, it's like the biggest fighting game tournament in the world. And last year it attracted over 14,000 players across 10 fighting games from over 60 countries, held at the Mandalay Bay. So it started off as 4 dudes doing text-based smack talk, disagreeing about strats, turned into the blueprint for what a larger scale fighting game tournament would look like, eventually being held in the same ring as real life fighters, because Mandalay Bay is known for its boxing tournaments. And because these were like young dudes making the rules, the tournaments were often rowdy, much like, at a real boxing match. And it always stayed that way. And fighting games are so fun. They are so fun to like be in the audience. Like I suck at fighting games. I am no good at it.
I'm so bad.
Oh my God, but they're so much fun to be a part of. Like it's crazy and loud and people are in chairs and the audience is involved. And like, it is completely different experience than going to like, a regular, a typical esports event. I love that you played. I wish that I'm going to watch you play now. I'm going to look for you.
No way. I'm so bad. I go 0 too. There's nothing to watch. I'm like pressing buttons. I almost won a game once. So there's that. Yeah,
one time.
The first 2 years, that was a little more intense. I was actually like kind of playing it at home a lot with my friends in local bars. But yeah.
That's so fun. Well. I would never have the guts to. The only like quote fighting game I've played is not really a fighting game at all. It's called Nidhogg. And it's like 2 people on the screen that are fencing.
That's so like, fun.
I'm good at that game. But this, where you have to know combos and stuff, my brain just falls right out. I can't do it. But I love watching other people do it. And over the last decade, big team esports franchises have added fighting game players to their rosters.
Yeah, we do.
I think CLG does, right?
We have 3 Smash. So 2 Melee, 1 Ultimate. Yeah, and we're super proud of them. We've had it for 5 years. So yeah, it's been quite awesome to have them.
I love it. And like, and it really helps the FGC. It helps players like be able to like fund everything a lot more.
Yeah.
Like actually be able to afford to go to tournaments. But interestingly, even though esports teams have accepted the FGC and signed players onto the teams, the FGC tends to reject the term esports. Like part of it is a cultural thing, like what I was talking about with, with like the rowdiness of it. Like there's a lot of people who are super afraid that once, big money comes in, it'll drain up. There was a Penny Arcade article about this subject a few years ago called Why the Fighting Game Community Hates the Word Esports. And it details like the long history of the players and the crowd being invested and involved and excited. And that if the corporations come in, they're going to pour money in the scene and ask everyone to stop. And like the loud and wild culture of the tournaments will get put to an end. And this article says the shouting, the intimidation of playing right next to your opponent, the feeling of being part of an unrestricted, unrestrained, underground grassroots community is what makes the FGC great. And it makes sense. Like big companies that come in, they're going to want to have best behavior in exchange for bigger money. And they have, shown over the years too, that they care more about the marketability of the game than over the actual player base and like what their opinions are. So culture is definitely one factor of it, but there's also a socioeconomic one with race as well. So the FGC is a flourishing example of diversity in esports, where
the best
many
one.
of and many of the pros are Black, while the rest of esports is pretty much filled predominantly with white or Asian males. And fighting games are typically played on consoles, so they're much more affordable than the high-end gaming PCs that are usually associated with like the majority of pro-level esports. There was an article by LaToya Peterson in The Undefeated that was titled, Why Aren't More Black Kids Going Pro in Esports? And it points out the PC console divide has inadvertently become a racial divide, while white and Asian players feature more heavily on the PC side and the African American and Latino players on the other. And she goes on to point out that if a player loves Dota, there's a sponsored path toward a career in the industry and a potential to net up to 10 million in the current prize pool. But if a player loves and put his or her hours into Street Fighter, at best, the highest individual take would be closer to 50,000. So that's just an overview of the FGC. It's a diverse community. It's run on local grassroots. It's highly competitive. It's a lot of fun. And with an understandable distrust of an industry that consistently underfunds and ignores console gaming and is therefore ignoring Black and Latino gamers at large. But at the same time, the FGC kind of stands as a beacon for young Black gamers. And writer Xavier Johnson, in an article for Medium titled There's a Racial Gap in Esports, he points out in the FGC, gamers compete against people from their own neighborhoods. So a young Black gamer will go to a tournament and see plenty of people that look like them, which brings a level of comfort to gamers entering the space and seeing people that look like them succeed. This mostly applies to Black men, though, because women of all races are still like unicorns in the competitive gaming scene. And so I guess I'm calling you a unicorn, Ms. Harvey.
We are unicorns. I think that we're probably white horses now, Yeah, so we're starting to be more like white horses. There's more and more of us. So we're not as rare, but
Right.
as on the winning side and at the top of their scene, then yeah, they're still unicorns.
So as we know, it's rare to see women in general represented in esports, and it's even more rare for Black women to be seen. There's a great article on this that I read on a site called Ozzy, O-Z-Y, and it talks about the disparity in the gaming industry at large. So people who work in the industry. And while just under 30% are women of all races, Black women are only 1% represented. Noting the double disadvantage of race and gender, the article points out it's little surprise then that none of the world's top 20 earning female gamers are Black. It goes on to talk about the younger generation of women that I talked about earlier that are carving out space for others like themselves by building out a network of support that never existed before. It's facilitating and encouraging and training aspiring female gamers of color to reach new heights in gaming. And one of those women is a 26-year-old pro gamer named Jeannail Carter, also known in the FGC as CuddleCore. You've probably heard of CuddleCore.
CuddleCore. Well, the only reason I have is because of you. You told me about how amazing she was But that's it. I don't know much more than she beats guys. But
That's amazing.
That's a good description of her, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. She's a badass, man. Like, more people should know about her. All right. So here's the thing. In 1994, CuddleCore was born at about the same time as the FGC. The FGC was kind of just getting going in like 94, 95. And so she was born at the same time. She grew up just outside Chicago, which was one of the 3 hotbeds that we talked about for the FGC. It was California, New York, and specifically in Chicago. So it sounds like from every interview that she's given, it sounds like she has a really lovely family with 2 sisters and really supportive parents. She did an interview with Tech and Gamer a couple years ago and seemed to really love the neighborhood that she grew up in. She said that her parents moved to the suburbs because of how poor the school system was becoming, just so they could ensure that their kids got a solid education.
Oh, wow.
So I love that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just goes to show how important it is, in a child's development to have, really involved and supportive parents. She's mentioned in a few interviews that there weren't a lot of other Black people in the area and that sometimes she felt out of place. And a lot of the people that she was around hadn't ever really seen many Black people before. But she credits her parents for teaching her to strive for excellence no matter who is present, just to prove the stereotypes wrong. That's what they've told her. She also did an interview for the World Showdown of Esports tournament series, saying some of the prejudice that she experienced was sometimes from, quote, my own people because I didn't sound a certain way. They would say I sounded more white. It made it harder for me to connect even with some people in my own family. It was as if being eloquent was something Black people couldn't be. So that's a lot for a young girl to be confronted with and to be taking on. There's like so much worrying and trauma centered around appearances in your teenage years as it is, to be dealing, with the confusing realities of, racism and, perception. Mm-hmm. But her parents were huge influences on how she moved through her life with determination, respect, and diligence. Her dad was actually the one who got her into gaming. Her original gaming memories actually center on the very first Tekken game. That's the game that she played, and she can remember as early as like 4 to 7 years old, just like mashing buttons with her dad, like playing Miss Harvey style. She's just mashing buttons, like being like... or my style. It's probably more my style. She probably knows actual combos.
So she's a Tekken player. Okay.
She's a Tekken player.
For whatever reason, I thought she played Mortal Kombat. So, okay. I don't know why.
I mean, I'm sure she has. But Tekken is her game.
Tekken is her game. Perfect.
Yeah. And she has like all these really fond memories of playing with her dad as a kid and like being really into it. And she did this interview with Top Tier, this guy Born Free.
Top Tier.
And she recalls crying when she lost and like to her dad, and her dad would say to her, "Why are you crying? Learn how to get good so you can beat me."
Get good.
Get good. Daughter.
Imagine your dad is like, play games. And he's like, get good.
Beat me. I love it.
Stop crying, just get good.
Yeah. And, she said that actually like having that family competition ended up making her play more Tekken. And she learned the whole move list. And the older that she got, she really started to appreciate the depth of the game. Where, when she picked up Tekken 6, when that came out, she realized that she could learn controls and combos and spacing and patience and awareness of the gameplay that it really takes to be a top competitor in the FGC. And at 15, she beat her dad 3 times in a row. And her victory over him made her want to play the game even more and to see how much better she could get. And it sparked inside of her what she called a true calling to be highly competitive. And she got pretty addicted to playing online, as she recalls, against other players. And she said, when I would lose, I was like, okay, I need to find out why I lost, so that she would lose and just train more. It made her even hungrier to compete and become better and better and better. But I think that's kind of like what true competitors really do. I mean, that's probably something you can really relate to, is trying to figure out where you went wrong and correct that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a frustration that you need to learn how to embrace it in a positive way. That's really difficult. But when you're a competitor, losing is the worst thing in the world. It's the worst. And you always feel like I never want to feel that way again. Like I need to practice more to never be in that position. But unfortunately, every competitor is going to be in that position again at some point. And then it's the same. You're like, I never want to be in that position again. I want to work harder. So, yeah.
I think that's what it takes in order to do it, because it's so hard to lose that if you don't know how to lose and get better, then you can't ever really be a competitor. You kind of like need to know how to do that. So the fire of competition is lit inside of her as a teenager, and she's playing other games at this time too. She's playing Soul Calibur and adventure games and horror games and DDR, Dance Dance Revolution.
Let's go.
Which is actually the origin of her gamer tag. Her favorite song from DDR was Murmur Twins, but there was a remix version of it called the CuddleCore remix, and it made CuddleCore rethink her gamer tag. So she said, this is going to be my new gamer tag because it sounds sweet and serious at the same time. And I love that her gamer take came from music. That's so cool. I don't know that really song though.
Me neither. And it's funny, I changed my tag once in my life, and it was for music too. And I came back to Miss Harvey.
What is Miss Harvey? Just like, I mean, obviously it's your last name.
Yeah. And then I had variation like Harvey, V, and then Yevra, Miss Harvey backward, you know. And it's just cool. It's a long story. We can get into it maybe another time. But I was called Shinoda for like 6 months. And
really?
It's the Linkin Park, the second singer, right? There's
okay.
Unfortunately, Chester, who's now in a better world, hopefully. And then Shinoda is the counterpart. So he's the one that wrote all the music, that did the rap. I don't know why at the time I like Shinoda more than Chester, because I really like Chester now.
Yeah. I love
so
that.
Go CuddleCore. I like it.
Yes, CuddleCore.
Yeah,
it's just really cool. And she was like, you know, what rolls off the tongue, and like she just really like loved that name, and it's a memorable one for sure. So, but out of all the games that she's playing, Tekken truly emerged as her absolute favorite. She loved the characters, and if you've never played Tekken before, think of the characters like a soap opera. There's It is very soap opera-y and like pro wrestling.
Oh my God, it is so a good explanation of what Tekken is.
Yeah, there's this Guardian article that I found actually, and that was from earlier this year, and they totally explained it best. They said, like any soap opera or pro wrestling storyline, Tekken exists on the principle of in medias res, a universe where stories are never ending and never beginning, and the viewer is expected to either catch up on or ignore whatever they don't understand. All the characters in the game are on their own hero's journey, and each one of them has a unique story, and they've all got drama and beef together, like all of them. And like no one's showing up in the Iron Fist tournament like just cause like people have like vendettas and like issues. They gotta like talk to somebody. So anyway, Tekken like might not be as famous as Street Fighter, for example. But where like Street Fighter was a big like arcade pop culture, like Nintendo kind of thing, Tekken was a PlayStation 1 game. And Street Fighter, while for all of its wonderful things in the world of gaming and being so influential to games in general, it's probably a little bit more on the generic side comparatively to Tekken, which is just has storylines and characters that are just a little bit more like special and weird and interesting. It's just such a fun game to play and to watch. So in her teenage years, Cuddle, she's learning skill and patience. And, you know, as a player, she tells Tekken Gamer that at 18, she finally first got exposure to what real Tekken players were supposed to look like. She says a friend got her links of videos to Tekken tournaments, and she also learned about all these other high-level Tekken players, which motivated her to get more involved in the scene. So she started asking more experienced players for advice and like which moves were vital for her chosen character, which is Alyssa. And one of the pro players, Little Mansion, responded to her, and he sent her 4 really important moves that she needed to know. And overall, she says that she's gotten advice from a lot of different gamers, ranging from how to stay composed during like tournament matches to how to, approach better matchups in general. And she really emphasizes in the interview that even though she gets advice from all these other players and that she's reached out and really tried to learn as much as she can, she says, no one holds my hand during this. I simply take the advice I've gotten and use it in a way that benefits me. And I love that. I love that. No one holds her hand. Like she's a badass. So Red Bull did a great piece on CuddleCore a couple years ago. They talked with her kind of about her early tournament experiences. Mm-hmm. It says her improvement as a competitor led her to local FGC tournaments where she gained the experience that allowed her to shine at majors. And gradually moving through the ranks from regional competitions to major events, she got to see her status rise. She actually recollects to them, every time I would go, I would place better and better each and every time, getting top 16s, then top 8s, and even getting a top 3 once at a bigger regional event and once at a major. So she's like enjoying it. She's in it. And in 2013, before like she was winning sort of all these tournaments, she went to school. And she came home from her first year at Queen's Institute of Art in Ohio. And she said that it was just unfortunately too expensive for her to keep up. So she moved back home and she started attending junior college in her hometown. And the thing is, like, she's a really talented artist. Like, I've seen her artwork online. She's got such great attention to detail in her images. And having watched people in her family as a young child paint, it kind of inspired her to become an artist herself. Mm-hmm. So art is something that she's really passionate about. And, while she was prioritizing school, she was also still competing at the same time. She tells Jinx TV, I created a lot of art in college. I was in college for 6 years. So I would game in college, but not as much as I do now. And during those 6 years, though, I was also competing. I was still being flown out to events during school breaks. And she tells Top Tier Born Free that moving home meant not having as many friends who lived near her anymore. And she wasn't into hanging out with her high school friends. So she decided to hit up the FGC. Yeah. So she went on Facebook, found a local group page, met a couple guys online, and they all started to go to tournaments together. And to this day, those guys are still some of her best friends.
That's kind of awesome. Yeah. I was about to be really upset at the American system for like putting her in that situation where she couldn't afford to go to school anymore, and she had to go back home. And then it led her to meet like this group of guys. So now I'm like, well, maybe not everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm still a little bit upset.
I know. I agree with that.
I'm looking at you, America.
The fact that she couldn't, it's just silly that people can't afford education, like that we aren't providing that in some way, shape, or form, honestly. Yeah. Everyone should get higher education. And, it seems like at her junior college, she was able to still get her, at least, schooling done. And at the same time, still find this like really accepting group of players in the game that she likes. So yeah, I agree with you. That's like a really cool thing. And she says that watching her friends succeed in Tekken is what encouraged her to actually compete on the next level. She said beyond local tournaments, she started to see her friends getting to travel and doing well on it. So she tells Disrupt Gaming FGC in an interview that she went to her first real tournament final round in 2015 and calls it her breakout moment. And it's something that will definitely come back a little bit later in the story. Cuddle played against Mr. Naps, and Mr. Naps is also known as Jimmy J. Tran, and he is like the best Tekken player in America. He's known as this. People know that he is one of the best. So is his brother.
Okay.
She's playing Mr. Naps and one of the best Tekken players ever, and Cuddle gets him into a final game, final round. And although she lost, she says it was in that moment that she knew, I can take down some of the best people. If I train, I can be on that level too. So playing against Jimmy J. Tran inspired her to be an even better competitor. So after that, she starts going to tons of tournaments every year, all the time, and performs pretty consistently on national levels at tournaments like Combo Breaker, which is a big FGC tournament where she saw top 16s, top 8s. She took 4th in the Canada Cup and claims her proudest moment in that Born Free interview was when she went to Amsterdam in 2018 at the Tekken World Tour Finals last chance qualifier, tournament names. Tekken World Tour Finals 2018 last chance qualifier.
Okay.
Say that like 10 times fast.
Yeah.
She placed 4th place there. And she said she attributes it to the fact that she was like, I was just doing it on my own. She got so much love from the audience there. The audience just totally supported her. And she wasn't used to this kind of attention. No one had ever got super excited at her win like this before. She hadn't like had fans or whatnot. And when she got eliminated and took 4th, the audience was cheering for her to come back on stage, which is a whole new experience for her to be celebrated like this. And she says that seeing a whole room full of people being so supportive of a Black woman made her feel really, really good. And she felt shocked.
That was in 2018?
Cool? I was in 2018, yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's very
2018
recent.
was a really big year for CuddleCore because that was the E-League tournament too. And with all of these accolades and accomplishments that she's gotten up to this point, Cuddle has always kept her cool. I've met her obviously, and I've interviewed her a few times, and she's truly just one of the most honest and earnest and thoughtful people I've met in the esports and gaming community. As she said before, she's been placing like top 16s in local tournaments since, the beginning of her career, but she just never thinks about it like that. She's always in this like mind state where there's always someone better than her. So that she always has to work harder. Personally, I think she just doesn't give herself enough credit. And I think she kind of knows that too. At least what she deserves to get, but that's who she is. She's very humble. She's aware of it all. She just doesn't let it get to her head. And there's something about that that's, just really awesome about a person. So I met CuddleCore in 2018 at E-League on TBS. I was a sideline reporter, and she was one of the 20 pro players that were there. And she was only one of 2 women that were invited to play, which I will say is more than most esports.
I'm already impressed they invited. Well, if you say she does like top 16s at majors and stuff, then I would have invited her, but there was 2.
And shout out to Christina Alejandra, actually, who was running E-League at that time for making that happen. She's a badass. Anyway, this tournament was called Tekken Team Takedown and remains one of my favorite esports events of all time. I got to spend a lot of time with the players because I was interviewing them. They were all largely looking at the 2 female players, CuddleCore and Kawaii Face Miles, who's a transgendered woman, as the weakest links. And Cuddle, was actually one of the 4 team leaders. So out of the 20 players, 4 of them were picked to be the team leaders. And they picked their teams on television in a snake draft. So Cuddle was first, and she got to pick the first player. And of that group of 16 that are now waiting to be chosen for the teams, like kickball style, is Jimmy J. Tran, Mr. Naps, the guy that she had her breakout moment with. And he was there, and she knows that he's like one of the best players in the world. So she immediately picked him as her first pick. So it goes down the line in the snake, and then like the person who's the last picks twice, and it comes back, and it does like until all of the players are picked. And the very last player gets put on CuddleCore's team because of the way the draft goes, if this makes sense. I'm doing snake images with my hand for those of you who are listening. Like, here's the snake
and
draft.
You know what, guys? I've been shaking my head the whole time. Yeah, I get it. For the last hours. For those who are listening. This is an amazing. I've never called it the snake draft, and I love it.
Snake draft. The very last person to be picked for like the team was Kawaii Face Miles. And that person, because CuddleCore had the first choice, she also gets to have the last person picked on her team.
So it seems as 5 if I can do math?
Yeah, so there's 4 teams of 5.
Okay.
So the 2 women and the best player in the world are on the same team. And the way they did it, so now you've got the 4 teams, right? So each of the 4 captains played against the other to figure out who they would face off against.
Okay.
So the teams get set, and it's Team CuddleCore first versus Team Anakin. And Anakin is this guy who's like an Atlanta guy. And by the way, E-League is shot at Turner TBS, which is in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So Atlanta has like a crazy representation for the FGC. Like there's a ton of fighting game guys that are there and who are from there. So Anakin, he's like sponsored by Red Bull at this point. He's one of the most ruthless competitors on the scene. The thing is, like, there's all of this back and forth between I'm interviewing people, right? So I'm asking people like what they think about the team and, if who's the weakest link and whatever. And they're all saying Team CuddleCore. Like, they have no problem just coming out and being like, they're the weakest. We're going to take them out. They're no good. They're trash. Like, they're not nice about it either. It's just very smack talk in your face. I loved it. And when I interviewed Mr. Naps, Jimmy J. Tran, about his team, he says to me, the team itself is not really the best team. And then there was like this pause. And I was like, oh, that did not sound very nice. And the audience freaked out. And then he says, but I think we can make it work if we play our matchups right. So he admits like this wasn't the ideal team. There was just drama at the tournament because of that. They played that clip for everyone and Cuddle has to see it and sit there and watch it. Like, that's crazy psychological stuff that's happening that you have to deal with as a competitor, knowing that your teammate is actively saying that they don't really believe in your chance of winning. And so when I asked her about the drama, she just says, she doesn't disagree with him, but she says, it doesn't mean that I don't have faith in my team. I still think we can pull it off. People shouldn't underestimate others, and we're going to prove Jimmy wrong. And she went and sat down right next to him. And people were like, oh, So now we've got Team Anakin versus Team CuddleCore. They each have a player drop out. So the way it works is it kind of works as like a tag thing. So you've got 5v5. She as the team captain decides to send one player up to fight, and Anakin's team sends one player up to fight. They play their rounds. Whoever gets knocked out is knocked out for good. And you do that until all 5 of the players on one of the teams is knocked out for good. As it starts, one of the members of CuddleCore's team knocks out Anakin, and then one of Anakin's team knocks out CuddleCore. Anakin was actually put himself to the game. So he's playing, and CuddleCore now has to decide, who am I going to put in to play against him? And like all of the analysts, there's like Rip and Tasty Steve and Sajam, and Richard Lewis was hosting. Everyone was like, what are they going to do? She's got to put in Mr. Naps. She's got to get this win. Of course, she's going to put him in. So I go up and I interview her, and she doesn't put him in. She puts herself in. And everyone's like, what? Like, you're the weakest link, though. Why are you doing that? So she goes up against Anakin, one of like the best players on the scene. And in her first game, she beat him 3 straight rounds. And then game 2, she beat him in another 3 straight rounds. And everyone was stunned because she just took out the most dominant player, one of the most dominant players in the country in 6 straight rounds, but she wasn't done. Rip, one of the commentators, actually writes about it on eleague.com and just talks about how like she just goes on to eliminate the rest of his team. She bodied 4 of them in a row and took out Anakin, Obscure, Joey Fury, and Spirogen all in a row. They all fell to Cuddle as she pushed her team closer to the grand finals without any need from Jimmy J. Tran. It was cool.
Wait, and it's so... What? So, like,
Yeah.
Did you ever interview her about that moment? Why did she put herself in?
Yeah, what she says, and it comes up later, is that you save your best for last. So while a lot of people kind of thought like, oh, Cuddle is being shady toward Jimmy J. Tran, like she just didn't like that he called her weak. She's saying, I don't disagree with him, but I can prove myself. I know my worth as a player. I know that I've beaten Jimmy before. I know that I've beaten other of these guys before. I know I can do it. And I'm going to save Jimmy J. Tran for that emergency in case I lose, because I know I can count on him to pick up the win. So she's looked at that as like just a strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it was a pretty smart strategy because everyone was like, where, is she going to play Jimmy? What's going on? And the audience is going crazy. Everyone's like, the Twitch drama is like at an all-time high. People are like, they can't believe she took out, 4 members of his team. The next, the other teams play, and the one that advances is Team Poke Chop. And Poke Chop is one of the team captains, and he's like this Atlanta Tekken dude who's known as the Mouth of the South. They did like this whole like package of him. He's so funny. He is the craziest, player. He's older. He's been on this team for a long time, like long time. He's a veteran. And he talks more trash than like anybody I've ever met. He is just talking trash about her, just being like, you're never going to win. You're never going to win. So it's his team versus her team. Thing is about it, we don't have to get into all the details.
So that's the final?
About it, the grand finals is her team versus his team. And 4 of her 5 players get taken out, and he still has 4 players left. So it's just 4 players versus the one, and it's Jimmy J. Tran who is on the bench. And she's like, this was the moment that I was waiting for to pull him in. So she knew that he could like finish it off for the team. And in a crazy run, leaving him taking out the remaining 4 players on Team Poke Chop, he did. And they took the W for the win of Tekken Team Takedown. It was unbelievable. It was exactly the opposite of what everybody thought was going to happen. I interviewed her on stage afterwards, and she was so overwhelmed with emotion. I was too. I ended up crying. Like, it was just because she was so moved by how excited everybody was, and just like proud of the fact that she, went beyond everyone's expectations. That she started to cry, and she said something to the effect of, and I couldn't find the exact interview, but she said something to the effect of, I just want the world to know that a woman can play Tekken. And it was awesome. Like it was just a really great moment for women in gaming in general. And I will tell you, it's not like the news media like covered it. Like, it's not like this was in Polygon or Kotaku or something, where a lot of these publications do like to kind of, while they're all good publications and I read them, there are times where I feel like they focus on the negative aspects of the industry more than when we actually have our successes. So like for her, this was a success. This was a moment to say, look, this person won this Tekken tournament. Not only that, on television, not only that, it was a fighting game, which doesn't get as many, as much love as other esports. On top of that, it was a Black woman who won. And there really just was not any, celebration outside of like more of the niche FGC publications out there, and like the interviews, the grassroots reporters and journalists of Tekken, on the scene, like interviewing her. But other than that, a lot of people didn't really know about it. I was so hype. I was telling everybody. I was like the biggest loudmouth about it, like telling literally everyone, going like, you got to know who this girl is.
Yeah, that's how I learned about it.
Yeah, I was a loud guy. She must get sick of me talking about her. I'm always like, CuddleCore, I love you.
Yeah, I think that we talked about her for the first time maybe like 6 months ago. So to be quite frank, I would have never heard about it if it wasn't from you. And that really sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
That really sucks.
We need more focus on when there are wins, and to celebrate when there are, so that people know who their role models are looking up to this. And like, she's one of the very few female pro gamers, not to mention Black female pro gamers. And she is blazing a trail for women like her to follow. And she's got such a great outlook about everything in general. But it hasn't been without its frustrations, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
She tells, and I'm going to probably mess this name up, Jeannail, in a player profile on this woman's YouTube channel, said, people have a hard time accepting that I can take out top players because they don't see it often. They'd rather assume it's fake, but it's very, very real. I've been doing it for a few years now. I think the sooner people realize that women can do these things, the quicker we can let other types of people come into the community without the harsh criticizing demeanor. After she won E-League, there were all these like people in the FGC conspiring with her against her online, saying that like Anakin purposely threw the match so that a woman could win, blah, 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 like just ridiculous things that no competitor would do. especially that many competitors on like that big of a stage. Like it's just not happening. She's aware of this, and she learned to like grow a thick skin. In that one WSOE profile that I talked about earlier, she says that as a Black woman in gaming, women would come up to her, especially women of color, and they would talk to her about how she inspired them to go out there and compete. You know, like there's not very many role models in this community. And even with their fears of maybe being judged by the other men in the community because they see someone like me succeeding, it gives them the strength to do that as well. And she also says, I didn't know that my color would play such a huge role in how I impact others, but it does. And I'm glad to help women not feel so afraid of who they are and instead to just be the best that they can be. And I really like her outlook on feminism and being a competitor in the scene, because something she says a lot was, I'm not competing against other women. I'm not trying to be, quote, like the best woman. I'm trying to be the best player. So I'm not looking to beat other women specifically. Like I'm not in that competition or headspace. And I like that about her, because I think it really, you know, opens her up to be supportive for so many other people and women especially. But a couple of things about her, like right now, she's got a documentary that she's being featured in called For the Win. They interviewed me for it actually. So I don't know when it's coming out or any information on that. I'm sure she'll talk more about it, but that's coming out on her. She said that she just finished a collaboration with Bandai Namco teaching beginners about Tekken 7. So she's doing coaching and training. She's going to be a part of a Pro 5v5 that her team Equinox Gaming is holding on December 12th.
She's on Equinox? That's awesome.
Yeah. And she's, you know, just continuing to make content that teaches and entertains and talks to her community on YouTube and Twitch. And the topic is usually about fighting games, but she does talk about like, you know, events going on in the world and whatnot. Last month, she was actually the final boss for this Tekken 7 online challenge in the Midwest. And so she said that was really cool to be a part of. And this month she won the Bud Light Beer League Tekken 7 East Coast tournament. I actually did coverage for that last year because I had a Bud Light show for 2 seasons. And so we were covering the Tekken 7 coverage of the Bud Light Beer League. So it's really cool that she won that. And she got 4th in the finals. She competed in the WSOE East tournament too and placed 2nd in September. She's got a podcast that she's running with her best friend named Alicia Junis called FGC Woke. That's going to be coming back soon. And yeah, you guys can hit her up and follow her.
She's everywhere. That's awesome. I'm looking at her at her Twitter right now. Aww.
What's her Twitter handle? Is it just CuddleCore?
Cuddle_core.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Definitely
see
follow
when she
her.
joined Equinox.
Yeah.
It's ran by a woman, right? Equinox?
It is, yeah, from what I was reading. I don't know a whole lot about their team though. It does seem like
it's
a lot of women
Emily.
involved.
Yeah. It's Emily's fighting game team.
Who's Emily? Tell me.
Nyx Rose. So go on your Twitter right now. It's at NYX Rose. And she founded Equinox Gaming a couple years ago. And I didn't realize it was the same team as CuddleCore. That's awesome. I'm so proud of this. Let me drop it to you. Just
Emily,
case.
I see her.
Okay, great.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited about what this group of female competitors at this age are doing. It's just like I said earlier, like we've got so many amazing women in this industry, but it's also really nice to see women who are in their like early and mid 20s also lifting everyone else up with them. There's something just really special about it. And I'm really proud of that group of girls. They inspire me a lot. And I'm just excited for her. I'm excited to see what she does next. She's still doing art and whatnot. And she's, one little thing too. She'll love that I say this. She has my favorite quarantine internet romance. She started tweeting at an FGC player named Scar, who I actually interviewed one time on my Bleacher Reports show. And he's like the nicest guy. And she started tweeting at him and it was kind of like flirty and everyone could see it. And he was kind of like flirting back. It just kind of went for like a couple weeks. And then people were writing like, so what's going on with this? Are you guys like,
no way.
People were totally involved. And he's like so cute and supportive of her. And like, it's just, It's just awesome. So anyway, they're like this cute little FGC couple running the scene.
Oh, that's awesome. I had no
Yeah.
idea. That's really cute.
So that's my
Oh.
story on CuddleCore. Make sure you guys follow her and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Because
Keep an eye
of
out.
gaming, CuddleCore discovered her passion for competition and became one of the best Tekken player in the world and one of the first women to win a national event in fighting games and just games in general on national TV. She's probably the first.
Yeah. How cool is that? More people should be covering her. I'm just telling you now. Any media outlets listening, do profiles on this girl. She knows what's up. So anyway, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Game Diaries. Please subscribe and listen to wherever you get your podcasts or watch on YouTube because we're on there too.
We are on the YouTube, and if you liked us, please leave us a review, a star, a comment, wherever you're following us, because it does help us. Each little comment and little star helps. And if you have a story that you like to share about how video games impacted your life, make sure you submit it because we read them every episode. Please visit thegamediaries.com to submit your love letter to gaming.
Yay!
See you next time.
See you next week.
Yeah.